Hey, how's it going?
Everyone. Good, how are
Nice open it.
you?
Hi, not too bad. Yourself?
Perfect. I'm great.
What is
Thank
your
you so
name?
much for asking. My name is
Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. What's your name?
على الدين. Aladdin.
Alauddin. Oh, so my name is
Okay, now let's go with now.
Okay, perfect.
So tell I can already guess you're a Muslim, I'm presuming.
Yes, I am Muslim, alhamdulillah.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, everybody's screaming in the background. My whole family's at home and we're all Arab, but
That's fine.
try to ignore them. To
I
answer
can
your
relate.
question, I think Islam is the true religion because there's a lot of scientific facts that are stated in the Quran far before science discovered them. So, in my opinion, like using logic, how could all this be a coincidence? So yeah, that's just basically what I believe.
Can I ask you questions about that?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So I have two different things that I want to ask about. First of all, I want to ask, um, so you're talking about science and logic and how could we have come from nothing? Um,
Right.
are you thinking about the necessity for a God in general or a creator, or you're talking about specifically Islam and Allah?
I'm talking about specifically Islam and Allah. Like in the Quran, there's a lot of things that um, scientifically we would not have been able to prove back then that later on throughout, the generations throughout the years that, the common microscope discovered years afterwards.
Okay. Um, I'm going to put the science topic aside for a second
No problem.
because I want to ask, you're talking about, for example, how could we have come from nothing? Um, and
Right.
I know that this is always put as like it's either Islam or we came from nothing. It's always one or the other. But
Right.
have you considered, for example, that this thought you're thinking about the necessity of a God or creator, not specifically Islam? I mean, it does apply, the same thing applies to Allah, but you're talking about the necessity of a God, right?
I'm kind of confused on what the question is, to be quite
Sure.
honest.
Let me rephrase it. Sometimes I talk too much and I say very little.
No, no, you're okay.
Um, So you were saying, how could we have come from nothing?
Right.
What I'm hearing is, therefore, there must be a God that would have created all of this, correct?
Right.
And in
Right.
my mind, that usually translates to then, okay, there should be a God that created all this, but why specifically does it make it Allah or Islam? Why is it not any other God from any other religion?
Oh, okay. So there's a couple things on why I didn't want to like come on here and like disprove other religions because personally I'm not here to convert anybody. But
Oh no,
for
and
me,
it's not. I'm not asking you to like eliminate other religions one by one. I'm asking, like, is that your process? Is that how that worked? Like, you look to
yeah, so
at
for
other
me it
religions
would
and you
really
eliminate?
just
Okay,
be a process of elimination. In my opinion, which doesn't have to apply to everyone, Christianity doesn't make sense to me. Same thing with Judaism, same thing with other things. So I kind of use the process of elimination.
okay. Um, I still have some follow-up questions if you don't mind.
No
Uh,
problem.
so I really, really like finally getting to talk to a Muslim, especially when they're not someone with. I don't know about your channel. Do you have like some kind of presence here as a like a Muslim TikToker, so to speak? Do you?
I'm kind of more of like an activist,
Okay.
but I've
Yeah,
deleted
it's
most
always
of my
more.
videos.
That's okay. No, I was gonna say it's always more interesting talking to I would classify, I suppose, like as everyday people rather than someone who's like a preacher, for example, just
Yeah, yeah.
because it's interesting getting in the mind of a regular believer, if that makes sense.
Right. Right.
So that's why I have a lot of questions on my mind. Like one of them, for example, is you talked about science in the Quran. And to get it out of the way, I would disagree with that topic, but that's not what I'm trying to get at here.
Hmm.
Um, at what point did that affect your faith? Like your belief in Islam, let's put it this way. From a scale of like 1 to 10, how much do you believe in Islam is the truth?
So on a scale of 1 to 10, I believe at a 10, but how much I would be able to preach Islam, probably, not so
Oh,
much.
no,
I'm
no.
not a scholar.
That's No, I'm not asking you how much you know about Islam or like
Right.
how solid is. No, I'm asking. So your belief is at a 10, correct?
Yes.
how much of that would you attribute to the scientific miracles?
Um, Honestly, about four.
Four. Okay, so it's six to
Four
four, I
points out of the
suppose.
10.
And what about the rest?
I would say the other two would be faith, and the other four would just be based off of religious upbringing, what my parents taught me, what I'm used to, just kind of like a routine.
Okay, interesting. You gave that a four and faith a two?
Um, yeah, because I feel like with the scientific evidence, it outweighs the faith, but also, like, I'm human. Like faith is very subjective, I guess you could say, and sometimes I do think, like, what if I wasn't born a Muslim, then would I have chosen this religion? So for
Mhm.
me, I like to look at it from an outside perspective, even though alhamdulillah I do believe 100%. I wouldn't credit all of it to my own knowledge.
Interesting. Okay. Um, so we've broken it down to four and two and four, right? The four being, for example, the scientific miracles in the Quran. Um,
Right.
has it happened that you've come across one of these scientific miracles and they've been disproven or reinterpreted and they're no longer a scientific miracle? Has that happened to you?
Um, Personally, no. I'm not that's personally probably just because I'm not too knowledgeable in Islam. But the ones that I have
Mhm.
come across, and I guess this could show a bias, but the ones that I have come across are proven later on. So to me, it's like, how could a book that's so ancient have all of these scientific evidences, and then later it's proven on by science? Like, how could a man have written that book and he did not have the equipment? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I understand. I understand the appeal of the scientific miracles angle. Like because I personally, I believed in it for a while as well. And people keep asking to delve into these, but that's not the point here, and I'm not trying to like corner you into answering questions about them. But let
I mean,
me
I
put
have a
it this
couple
way.
if somebody's interested in learning, but
Oh, okay, we could talk about those right after this one.
yeah, yeah, of course.
If you've come across something that was like proven wrong, like you haven't yet, right? And
Hmm.
partly because you said, partly could be because you're biased or you haven't really made it a point to look into them, because not everybody really has time or energy. Like, no, not everybody goes out of their way to do that.
Right.
Um, but if you come across something that is scientifically incorrect, like a description that is scientifically incorrect, how much would that take away from your 10 belief in Islam? Like 10 out of 10?
I would feel like that would only take away a two, but I would still believe in Islam because that's where the faith part comes in, where you just, blind faith, where you just believe, where you just have to, like, weigh the good and the bad, and if that makes sense.
It does. Um, so if that happens, it's going to put you at a two, and a four, I suppose. So four being your upbringing, two being the faith, and two being the rest of the science in the
Right,
Quran, I suppose, right?
right.
Okay. So what if it happened that you lost all of the belief in or all the confidence in these scientific miracles? Where that would put you at a six. How do you think you're going to go from there?
I mean, personally, I would not think that I would lose any of the confidence in the scientific evidence. So I think that would be just a hypothetical. Um,
Hmm.
and it's less likely to happen. But there's not 100% possibility, but
So what would be your course of action if that happened, hypothetically?
if that happened hypothetically, I would try to be more knowledgeable on my religion, start learning a little bit more about Islam, learning a little bit more about other religions, and see if maybe um, I do believe in God as one, or I do believe in God as a whole, or if I just don't believe in my religion specifically.
That makes sense. Um, and but before we get to, I'm curious about what miracles you want to mention, just because everyone in the comments is very curious as well. Um, but last thing I want to get to before that. So you're saying if you come across like errors, for example, in this science in the Quran, if hypothetically that happens, um, that wouldn't that wouldn't actually be negative points. It would just take away for a little bit till you strengthen your faith in other ways, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think it's fair that you're treating, like, do you think it would be more fair if it would count as a point against Islam if it was wrong? If it counts as a point for Islam, if it's true?
I mean, you could say that, but I feel like that's also where just the faith part comes in, where it's subjective towards every person. So what could be a minus point to me could be, a plus point to you, could be,
No, I mean for you personally. So, if for some reason you found that these scientific miracles are not convincing or not miracles by the definition of a miracle, so on, whatever, that wouldn't be a penalty against Islam, right? It would just be points taken away, right?
yeah, but it wouldn't completely offset me from the religion.
No, no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't make you a non-Muslim, but it wouldn't, like it wouldn't chip away at your faith more than that part of it being gone, right?
Right.
Um, okay. I'm just going to share in my case. I didn't heavily rely on them. I mean, I was told some of these things in passing and I repeated them and I genuinely thought they were true. And when I realized they weren't miraculous, um, I mean, I feel like if it's a, at least in my case, if it's a point for to prove religion, it should also be a point to disprove religion. What do you think about that?
I think that could be fair.
Okay. Okay. Um, Before we get to you're going to mention a miracle or so. Do you have any questions for me?
Um, yeah, so I'm guessing you were a Muslim previously.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think offset you from the religion the most? Was it like one thing, or was it kind of like a combination of things that really?
So it was a journey. It was a lot of things. I talk about them more in detail on my YouTube channel, but in short, what started it for me, or one of the things that really started it is um, like I had accepted all the miracles that had happened before. Like in my head, I I imagined that all the miracles stopped with the prophet, or at least all the major miracles. You know, when the
Hmm.
prophet died, there was no more of those. Um, and I resolved that in my head as, you know, this unnatural thing happening. It used to happen. It doesn't anymore. That's not an issue. But what shook my faith a little bit was trying to understand the concept of predestination, qada and qadar, and free will. How can both
Okay.
things happen at the same time? And more importantly, it was more about it's part of why I'm talking about this. What about the good people or the honest people, let's put it that way, who don't believe in Islam? What is their fate in Islam?
Right.
And I know what all the answers are out there, but yeah, that was something that was not convincing for me. And seeing the similarities between Islam and other religions, at least in the way that they arrive at faith, not necessarily in the
Hmm.
specifics of them, but what makes someone believe in them, it seemed like all the same things, just, you know, replace some words, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's completely understandable. I understand what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of at the core of what got me questioning. And it was a long process because that kind of thing, like when I first had these questions, it wasn't that I thought predestination and free will do not make sense together, therefore Allah is not real and I don't believe in Islam anymore. It's just a
Right.
confusing thing in my head for a long, long time, if that makes sense.
Right. No, that's completely understandable. I feel like a lot of times there's just some things where faith plays a big factor, and if you have that faith but slowly you just kind of you have these questions, it kind of cracks at that. So little by little I feel like it depletes. Not saying that it's your fault or anything, but that's just completely, I understand, that's valid.
Mm. I'm kind of conflicted now if I want to ask you about that, the miracles that you had on your mind, or I also want to ask you, uh, what do you think, how do you feel about disbelievers who, what do you think is going to happen to disbelievers in the afterlife?
To me it would, and I don't mean to offend anyone because this is just, the
Hmm.
belief, but in the Quran it basically you just go to hell. So
Okay. How do you reconcile that as a Muslim with, people, disbelievers that you know in real life? How do you feel about that? Does that make you feel any sort of way, or?
To me, no. I do pray for a lot of my friends because I would like to, because, you know, to me and a Christian, he thinks I'm going to hell and I think he's going to hell. Like if I was in a room with a Christian, we both think we're going to hell. And it's not going to get anywhere by arguing about it because my faith is strong and his faith is strong. And, he has a curtain around his eyes. I have a curtain around my eyes. So it's not really, we have such a bias towards our religions that it's not going to do us any benefit by arguing about it. So I think that's where the prayer part comes in, where it's like, I'll pray for you. Hopefully, God or Allah changes that in your mind and opens your heart up to my religion. Now, would I go out and try to convert someone? No. If they were genuinely curious, would I try to persuade them towards Islam if they were open to the idea? Yes. Um, would I not have Christian friends? No, because I think personally, what happens in your afterlife has no effect towards me. So your personal belief also should not have an effect towards me.
Okay, that's a very balanced take. I want to share how I felt about it as a Muslim because this again ties to your previous question about why what shook your faith in Islam or something along those lines. Um,
Right.
you said something interesting. I wouldn't go out of my way to convert them or try to convince them of Islam. I felt the opposite. So it wasn't that I was one of those, I want to advise you, sister, kind of really
Right.
annoying type of Muslim. Not at all. Like I didn't like to butt in people's private business, but I was concerned. I felt concerned for those people in a way. Um, like I started thinking about it and asking, what about those people? Like, what is their fault if someone, like you put it, has a curtain around their eyes, just like I have a curtain around my eyes about their religion? And the answer that I usually got was maybe Allah is gonna bring them hidayah. He's gonna turn them to Islam at some point if they're honest and so on. But all those maybes amounted to small percentages. Like when it comes to real life, it doesn't
Right.
happen that those people convert. Like even if I sat down with someone, like that's something that I did throughout university. Again, not to make people join Islam, but it was more like, hey, let me tell you, Islam is not what you think it is. And this is what my life is like as a Muslim, and this is what Islam is actually like. Because I wanna, as they say, soften their heart towards Islam, right?
Right.
Um, just
So for
not because
me,
I want to expand the ummah. Yeah, go ahead.
right. So for me, that's where it comes to I see the things that I do as a Muslim, and I know I'm not perfect. There are certain things I could perfect in myself. So even though you're supposed to go out and preach and, try to tell other people, hey, this is Islam and this is what we stand for, it's like how, to me, it's almost hypocritical, and hypocrisy is such a big sin in Islam. For me to go out there and be like, hey, you're Christian and you don't believe this and you're going to hell, when there are things in my religion, such as the hijab, which I wear, but I wear it incorrectly, that I could perfect first.
No, it wasn't quite about that. It was more about I want to save them. Like knowing that those people, if Allah doesn't save them, um, if they, even if they hear about Islam, they're probably not going to be convinced, even if they sit down and have a talk with the sheikh, because they're starting off from a point of, I don't know, growing up in a different religion or a different culture.
Right.
So that made me feel uneasy, that these people are going to hell, and I couldn't leave it up to, Allah knows what's going to happen and Allah is fair, if that makes
Right.
sense.
So I
So
feel
yeah,
like
that
that's
that's what
where,
caused me conflict.
right. No,
Mm.
I completely understand that. That's completely valid. Um, but I feel like that's where your actions speak a lot more than your words. Where as to you could preach Islam to somebody all day, but if they don't want to understand Islam, they can't, and there's nothing you can do about that. So if you really wanted them to, you'd show them the ways of Islam, you'd show them, morality, stuff like that. And if they chose to convert, then that's up to them. If not, we all have free will in Islam. So you cannot force somebody to convert, nor can you force them to believe.
That is a very good point, actually. You said a couple of things about they can choose to convert or not, right? They can choose to accept Islam or not. Um, so, do you think that if you sat down with a few Christian friends, for example, and you showed them Islam the right way, well, maybe not you because you're not a scholar, right? But you took them to the masjid, and a trusted scholar sat with them, and they explained everything. And at the end of the day, two of them, for example, said, yeah, I want to learn more, and two of them said, yeah, this is not convincing to me. I think I'm going to stick with my faith. Do you think they actively chose to disbelieve in Islam?
I do. I think we have free will.
So do you think that choice was intentional, as in, like, I know I'm doing the wrong thing by not joining Islam?
No, I think that choice is more of, they just genuinely do not have that faith. And as much as you could spit scientific evidence or tell somebody that, hey, this is the right thing, you cannot force somebody to believe in something, nor can you prove something true if they just don't see it as valid. So that's where,
So do you
you know,
think, like, that's the thing I try to understand as a Muslim. How do I can't force that, but I really want to help them get there. But I couldn't. And then I realized there's a flaw in this whole system, or at least what I think is a flaw. Because in that sense, if they chose using their free will, chose to disbelieve, as you put it, or they stayed with their religion, do they
mhm.
deserve to go to hell for that? Is what I was thinking about.
I So I think it's a very like multifaceted argument. I don't want to say anybody deserves to go to hell. I'm not a I'm not a religious figure. I'm not God, astaghfirullah. I'm not
Mhm.
anybody who is in the moral place to say, hey, you're going to hell, hey, you're going to this. So for me, it's just not a question I would be comfortable just, you know, saying that somebody deserves to
Understandable.
go to hell.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. In my case, it was a question that just stuck with me and I couldn't get rid of.
No,
But I
that's
understand
completely
that not
understandable.
everybody, yeah. Um, all right. Well, if people really wanted to know before we move on, can you share one of those miracles with us, or one of those scientific miracles from the Quran, for example?
So one of the facts that I know the Quran stated is one of them was about the two seas, how they meet side by side. Between them is a barrier, so neither of them transgress, and that's in the Quran, Surah 55, verse 19 through 20. And it was actually found out later through science, a while later, that there are two different seas that meet, and there is a barrier that divides them, which helps, the seas maintain temperature, salinity, and all of that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that with us for the commenters who wanted to know.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me on here, by the way, and I appreciate you for being
For
so
sure.
respectful.
Yeah. I have one last question. Would you mind if I post this segment of the interview somewhere, like on YouTube, or would you rather I don't?
As long as I'm not going to get doxxed, then that's completely fine.
I suppose I can crop out your username from it.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for letting me do that. I only ask people if they don't have their channels dedicated to talking about this topic. So, in this case, I had to ask. So, yeah, thanks.
Right, yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me on here.
For sure. Have a good one.
Have a nice one.
You too. Bye bye.